Okay, welcome everybody to the third STEM Fairs workshop. Today we will be talking about how to communicate your projects, including how to create a nice looking poster board, and how to properly communicate your project with the judges. And today we have special guests, Caitlin Wu and Yuri Kin, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Caitlin?
Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin. I participated in CWSF 2 years ago, and I'm from Waterloo, Ontario, and right now I'm a second year health sciences student at Queen's University.
Hi, I'm Yuri. I participated in Canada-wide Science Fair in Edmonton 2 years ago as well, and I am from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I'm in grade 12.
I'm Prabnor, and I'm your Prime Minister currently. And today I have with me Prithviraj, who is our STEM Minister, and I'll also let him introduce himself.
Um, Hello, my name is Prithviraj Singh. I'm in grade 10 and I participated in Canada Science Fair in 2024. And yeah, and I'm the STEM Minister.
So first, we're going to start off with some questions for our guest speakers, and at the end, you'll also have opportunities to ask your own questions. So our first question is, how do you prepare for presenting your project? Like, how long should your project be? How do you know, like, to stay in this time limit? Sometimes students have like a lot to say, and that doesn't leave a lot of time for questions. And should I like memorize my presentation, or should I just kind of go with the flow? And just general tips for that.
That's a good question.
I'd say limit down your presentation to like roughly a couple minutes or so, 3 minutes, something like that. Keep those details that are very specific, kind of on your presentation, very technical, because essentially people kind of have short attention spans, and you really want to present your project in a very engaging way in a short amount of time, so it's memorable. And all those technical things, that's what your poster's for, that's what your research paper is for. And it's not something that everyone understands because not everyone works in your field. So I think that's kind of something you can kind of keep to a minimum when you first present.
Yeah, I agree with what Yuri said. I Yeah, a couple of minutes, like 5 minutes maximum, I think is around reasonable. I think having it conversational and not scripted was something that was important to me and my science fair partner. We had like an outline of big topics we wanted to touch on in the process of our project, and we kind of just talked the judges and the visitors of the science fair through our journey throughout the project. I think some important things to highlight are the relevance. So, why is your project so important? What impact will it make? And also like the inspiration behind it. Some brief background information. Definitely don't focus on the background for super long. You just want it to be enough so that the judges aren't lost. And I think yeah, bring them through your whole prototyping process if that applies to you. Some major barriers you encountered and how you got over them. Yeah, just talking them through like kind of like storytelling, start to finish, and yeah, just keep it conversational. I think assess the judge's behavior as well. For example, if they're looking bored, maybe you want to like move through it a bit faster, getting through like the most important parts. Don't worry too much about the details. If they look really intrigued at specific sections, you could like elaborate a little bit more than what you had intended. And then using your poster as a visual to kind of like pictures in a storybook, I think helps to keep them engaged. And yeah, just overall having a plan, but not being robotic about it.
Definitely. And building on that, did you both have like any specific storytelling techniques that you found like worked well for like scientific presentations and communicating like complex scientific topics to a general audience?
Cool. I don't know. I think for the most part, I kind of just wrote down a couple of jot notes, like what the main points of my project were, why I did it, the background of it, and I kind of went through the prototyping process a bit as well. So really, I just wrote down like I think it was like 5 or 6 jot notes, and then I went from there. I kind of just memorized it from those 5 to 6 jot notes, and I elaborated from those jot notes. Really.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. Honestly, I did pretty much like the same thing. I think in terms of storytelling, the most important part is the start and the finish. I think you want to start off your presentation strong by capturing their interest. So some techniques that my partner and I use, we like we didn't keep it consistent the whole way through. We just kind of experimented to see which one works like more. But we started off by just using like fact that was shocking. So for example, the project was 2 years ago, so my memory isn't that fresh anymore. But something about like Braille literacy being only like 10% of the whole Canadian population who are visually impaired. So clearly there's a need for more Braille education. So that was like emphasizing the like magnitude of the problem to try to get the judges interested from the start and having them understand why they should keep listening because the project is important in the real world. And then finishing off with also like a strong conclusion. For example, like the impact it can have in the future, what you're doing to keep the project going in the future. I think talking about the future is important, talking about your results and not just what the results are, but what the results mean. So I think for storytelling, the start and the finish, like the first impression and the leaving impression, I think are the most important. Yeah.
Definitely. And how do you like describe a very complex scientific topic to a general audience who might not have possibly like any experience in that field? And should you use like technical terms or should you go for more like general spoken everyday like language?
I like what Caitlin said. You can sort of analyze the judges' expressions. If they look kind of confused, then you can kind of sort of simplify your explanation. This is what I would do kind of beforehand. So beforehand, I would try to kind of come up with an explanation for something like convolutional neural networks, which is kind of what my project was on, and kind of simplified down to like a fifth grader level, something that really anyone can understand. So getting rid of really specific technical terms like yellow networks, things like that, things that people who do not work in artificial intelligence would know. Getting rid of all those technical things really helps, especially for someone who doesn't work in your field.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree too. I think sometimes one like miss or like one like misconception is that if you use big words or technical words, they'll make your project look better because they'll make you sound smarter. But I think that the opposite is true. I think if you know how to break complex topics down into like lay terms, then that truly demonstrates like your overall understanding and intelligence. I think if you can turn like a university or high school level topic into something that an elementary school kid can understand, then that means that you truly do understand it. And then, like you mentioned, the judges you're gonna get aren't gonna be experts in your field. And like in fact, it's likely that you probably know things that they don't know, which is a strength in its own way. But then it's important to think back to before you started your project, like how much did you know? I think how much you knew at the start of the project is a good way to start with determining what terms you should be explaining before you use them, or like at what level you should be explaining your project at. So I think where you started is a good starting point for the level that you should be explaining your whole project to. And then just being very open to questions, like telling them like please don't hesitate if anything I'm saying requires more elaboration or further like defining, please let me know. Like feel free to stop me at any point in my presentation to ask questions. I'm super open to questions. Just like being very friendly and clearly conveying that like questions are just like totally fine. And yeah, I think just conveying that open attitude, open mind is very important too.
I agree. Smiling definitely helps. Um, and our next question is, how do you incorporate visuals and props into your presentation?
Ooh. What I had for my project, if I remember correctly from 2 years ago, is I had the poster board where I had some diagrams about how the machine learning worked and how the neural networks worked. So it was very simple diagrams. They were like boxes, and they had some arrows just to show. Because again, you're gonna have people who don't really work in your field come over and look at it, so you want to make it kind of as universally understandable as possible. And then I also had, I think, 2 or 3 prototypes of my product beside the poster board so that you can kind of walk through physical prototypes that you had and show them your whole innovating process. So that's what I did. That's kind of how I conveyed it, really. And I think it's still the same for this year. I think it's always has been that you will have a thing it's called ProjectBoard online, so you can have a lot of visuals on there too through video or through your slides.
Yeah, for sure. I think use the resources and like the formatting of the science fair to like help you present. For example, the 2 posters that you print out at CWSF, I think that's like the perfect place to, instead of load it with text, load it with pictures. For my project, my partner and I, we made like a map of all the prototypes that we made, and also some other like graphs and ways to show like the data from our experiments. And then I think 3D printing nowadays is like a super huge benefit, because whether or not your prototype is like functional or not functional, at that point, if you can 3D print it and it's tangible, I think that makes your project a lot more interesting, especially when the judges have to like listen to so many presentations. They're using their ears and eyes a lot. If you give them something to hold, I think that makes an impression. It makes your project more memorable. Um, yeah, so I think each project is unique. You'll have to think of your own way to showcase like a more tangible way of presenting your project. For my project, my partner and I, we had this functional prototype that was interactive, so the judges could use it themselves. We set aside like 1 minute of our presentation times for the judges to be using our prototype. I think interacting the judges with the project also helped to make it more engaging. And yeah, like Yuri said, the project board, that's like public to everyone. So the video that you post, all the pictures that you can post, really maximize that to your advantage.
I agree. Engaging like the judges is like a very good way to like get them to better understand your project. So our next question is, what do you do if you don't know the answer to a question, and how do you prepare for unexpected or challenging questions?
Oh, wow. I don't think the judges are expecting you to have PhD level understanding of your field. That'd be very, very, very like incredible for a high school student. So if you really don't know the answer to a question, you can just be honest because they're not expecting you to know everything. I think that you should try to like even if you don't understand, you should try to sort of make an educated guess and explain how you think something would happen. Again, like, it depends on what the question is, but for the most part, they're not really gonna expect you to know absolutely everything in your field.
Yeah, I think number one, don't lie. Don't ever lie. Whether or not the judges catch you or they don't catch you, like it's just not ethical. So don't lie if you don't know the answer. I think something that works, if you have a partner with you, if you yourself, like if you don't know the answer to a question, like maybe your partner does. So my partner and I, we had like a secret signal to decide like who's going to answer a question. Like generally through eye contact, we knew like who would answer the question, but you can piggyback to come up with an answer using like educated guessing and just logically thinking your way through it. You can verbalize your thinking to the judges. And then, yeah, like I said, if you have a partner, you can each contribute. I think having 2 minds together answering one question that neither of you fully know the answer to helps a lot. And then, yeah, just be honest and transparent. Like Yuri said, you're not expected to have PhD level knowledge, and the judges know that. They know that this science fair is directed for youth, and a lot of the questions that they ask, if they're difficult questions, the judges know that they're difficult questions. Like it's more like a test to see what your critical thinking skills are like, and to evaluate the depth of your knowledge in that field, and just overall do your best to apply what you do know to try to figure out what you don't know. And yeah, I think the most important part is to just not lie.
Yeah, definitely. And our next question is, what types of questions do judges ask at regional fairs versus CWSF?
Ooh. What do you think about this, Caitlin? Do you have any?
I can start. Honestly, not that big of a difference in my experience. I think so. My regional science fair was in Waterloo. It was the Waterloo Wellington one, and a lot of the judges were university students. So I think, yeah, there were university students. I think there were some professors and yeah, and university faculty members. When it came to CWSF, like that level stayed relatively the same. So their questions were also relatively the same. Of course, there are still like differences from fair to fair, but I think that's just differences between people to people because the judges themselves are individuals, so the questions they ask will be different. I think some common ones is why. Like, why did you do what you did? I think being able to give reasoning for your actions and the steps you took in your project is really important. Um, a lot of the times, if the judges don't have any big questions they want to ask, they'll ask for the inspiration of your project. So I think having that answer ready is like standard. Like, why did you start your project in the first place? I think that's a very common question judges ask. And then I think analyze your own project as if you were a judge for your own project, and then try to come up with questions of your own, like weak areas of your project that you identify. Try to like come up with answers prior, and also you can make use of like all the other science fair members or participants that are there and members of your own team or your classmates, friends, family, etc. Like have them listen to your presentation, have them ask questions. Like I'm sure that the questions they ask the judges will probably ask themselves.
Yeah, I think exactly the same, honestly. My regional was at the University of Saskatchewan, and basically the same as Caitlin, I had a lot of faculty, so I had some professors and quite a bit of researchers come over to my project. A lot of them were actually in my field, which was kind of surprising, but some of them weren't at Saskatchewan. So at that level, it was kind of like that. I feel like at the national level, I had more judges that were roughly in my field. So in my opinion, I think through and through, you can really expect kind of the same sort of judging experience at both levels. There will be, again, some differences, like Caitlin said. Other than the question of why, I do think another question is how. Like, how did your project come to be? Like the process you went through it. If there are a lot of hardships, a lot of failures, I think explain that too. Sort of, you can be vulnerable in your presentation, but also show like coming back to it. And that kind of shows perseverance and kind of how hard you spent working on this project. So really, really emphasize on sort of the process, how you made your project, and also the background of your inspiration for the project as well.
Definitely. And do you have any advice for how to prepare for your presentation if you're like feeling nervous right before it? How to like build up your confidence?
Okay, I would say for presenting, there's no need to memorize anything. I mean, it's your project. You kind of know how you did it. You know your process. You know why you did it. There's not really a point to memorize like a page of scripts or anything. And I feel like if you do, it kind of works against you because then it really sounds a bit robotic, and it's not something that you want to come off as. You want to come off as natural. So again, I would just write down a couple of jot notes and then present in that way. And like Caitlin said, find classmates, find parents, and ask them for like really honest feedback that you can practice over and over again. Practice in the mirror if you don't have anyone to practice to. And honestly, I would do this like a week before the science fair, so you have a couple of days to really revise your strategy going into it.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all really good strategies, and I agree with them completely. Yeah, like Yuri said, don't do a script. It makes you sound robotic. It takes away that engagement. It takes away like your genuine interest. I think when you practice your presentation like over and over again, you'll just naturally come up with a script anyways that sounds much better and is more flexible and engaging. I think something that I this is something looking back that I think came in handy. Outside the science fair, like what kinds of activities do you do? For example, does anyone here do DECA or debate stuff or like I don't know any of those like high school extracurriculars that involve with or that are involved with like case competitions, debates, presentations? I think in those like activities you're already developing your skills with interacting with people, with presenting a topic, with communicating your thinking effectively. I think when you do these things on a regular basis, like presenting at the science fair is no different. Like as long as you know your stuff, you can effectively communicate with others, then you'll be fine. I think also like even if it's not related to like academic stuff, even if you work in customer service, like for example, Starbucks, or if you tutor, or if you, yeah, like if you teach at all, I think all of these skills also help a lot with just general presentation stuff. So, yeah, don't be scared to step out of your comfort boundaries and just take on as many opportunities as you can to really put yourself in that spotlight for sharing knowledge and communicating with others.
I agree. And sometimes it feels like your like first judging session didn't go very well. Do you have any tips for like how to get over that and make sure that your second one you like feel better about it?
I had one judging experience I was actually quite memorable. So, like Caitlin, I also had a working prototype. But I remember when the judge was using that prototype, I think the battery died and he couldn't use it. And that was like so embarrassing. And I was just like, I was lost. Like, I was going to quit the science fair right there. But I think you can't let one bad experience make your other experiences bad. That's just like a domino effect that you do not want. You kind of have to just forget about it for like that moment and still continue to try to be your best for the other presentations, because if you let that one moment affect you, then in the future like you're really just affecting yourself more and more. One experience is going to affect you that much. I really thought that that experience was going to absolutely like sort of ruin the rest of my judging experience, but it didn't. So just really forget about it. That's what I think. And it was really hard to say, but that's kind of what you have to do. Another thing you can do is to not see judges as someone that's so high ranking. And in the end of the day, they really are just people. They're people like you and me. So you have to kind of just think of them like a friend or as a teacher, somebody you would talk to every day, because they aren't gods. They're again just people. They're nice for the most part, right? So, they volunteer because they want to help youth. They want to inspire youth to do science fairs. So they're not mean. Don't be so scared of them.
Yeah, that's very well spoken. I agree. And like Yuri, like I think bad judging experiences are just bound to happen. They're inevitable. So I think it's important to mentally prepare yourself for when like the unexpected happens. So similar to Yuri, my prototype also like stopped working at some point with some judge. I think um just in that moment you can just like explain how it was supposed to work, and then usually they're understanding, like they know that mistakes happen, and yeah, they're just people. They're pretty open about it. And with bad judging experiences, I think it's also important to learn like what you can do to improve, or to maybe like how to, maybe they ask you a question but you didn't respond to as well as you hoped you would, then maybe formulating a better answer so that if someone asks it in the future, then it'll be better. I think just reflecting off why it was a bad judging experience and trying to grow from it is important. And yeah,
Yeah, especially since there's like multiple judging sessions at CWSF, you can use one experience to learn from and then the next one will be better. So yeah. And then my next question is, do you have any general tips for good verbal science communication?
Oh, um, again, don't use a script. I would say, and don't memorize, just as Caitlin said as well. Really try to go from the heart. Have a lot of eye contact, smile a lot, have good posture. Everything that you would do in a regular sort of conversation, continue with that. Again, like Caitlin said, judging at CWSF is no different than presentation at school, tutoring, debating. It really is no difference. And I think one way you can prepare is go online and search for how people presented in the past. There are a lot of examples from science fairs worldwide where people have uploaded their presentations, and you can kind of critique them or more take advice from them as well, and just really see how they present and learn from them.
yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think some things just to add on is the speed at which you talk. Um, I think when you know something so well, it's easy to start talking at lightning speed, but try to avoid that. Try to keep yourself grounded, pace yourself. Um, yeah, I think another thing is maintaining eye contact is very important. Look your judges straight in the eyes, even if it's intimidating, just do it, because eye contact and body language is like a huge thing. It's it's actually more important than the content of the words coming out of your mouth. There's a statistic about that somewhere, but I forget the specific number. But most communication does come from body language and like non-verbal stuff. So really pay attention to that. Once again, all of that stuff comes with confidence. It comes with practice. If you're doing your science fair presentation as the first presentation you've ever done in your life, and it makes it a lot harder to have that like to be conscious about your body language, eye contact, the speed at which you're talking, all of that stuff, while trying to focus on the project itself. So I think just trying to practice all of these things in your everyday lives makes it a lot better. Yeah.
Yes. I agree. It's very easy to go super fast when you know your project that well. And now I'll pass it on to Prithviraj, who will ask questions more related to like the project board itself.
Okay, so my first question is like how to format a project board. Like what sections should it have?
Oh, I really utilized my video. Like I think I saw your video too, Caitlin. Like after the science fair, and it was well done. It was well produced. So I would say the video is something that you can quite spend quite a bit of time doing because if you don't have a prototype that you can bring, that's where you would show your prototype, and you kind of have to do your video like you're pitching it to them, right? So the video is I think 1 minute, I believe. So really use that 1 minute and try to make it come off as a really good impression because that's something that makes your kind of project a bit more memorable if you put a lot of time in that video. So that's kind of what I did, and that's would be my advice. But outside of that video, again, load up that project board with some photos, diagrams. You have a lot of room, so really load it up. And the project board also has space where you can explain your project. If you have technical sort of details, that's kind of where I would put the explanations there. So you won't have to bring up in your conversation or when you pitch because that kind of wastes a lot of time, especially something that's a very concept that's very how to say complicated, right? So that's somewhere that you can load up a bunch of diagrams, a bunch of images, and also have a bunch of a bit more technical explanations there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good explanation. Yeah, like Yuri said, the video is only 1 minute, which is not a lot of time. I like to think of the video as like an abstract of a paper, but instead of it being all text, you want to really showcase all the hands-on, like physical, interactive things. And it's also kind of like the first impression of that the judges have on you. They see what you look like, they see what you sound like, how you speak, and then like how you approach your project and how you present your project. So I think having a good solid video is it really enhances your project board. I think for my video, my partner and I we spent like a whole day just filming it because we wanted since it's only 1 minute, I think having a script is a good idea. My partner and I, we made a script that wasn't so robotic and it wasn't word for word. It was just in general to keep us within the time limit. And yeah, we made it. We had to record the snippets so many times because we would stutter accidentally or like yeah, stutter or go away from the script and go over time or yeah, anyways, it took a while. Yeah, explore with like the lighting and the angles and stuff. Try to make it as professional as you can. Um I think yeah, try to make it creative. Include snippets of your prototype working if you have a prototype. Yeah. And then for the rest of the project board, try to really load up those pictures, like Yuri said. Like pictures are your best friend, and use the space for text. Like break things down into smaller paragraphs if you can. I believe you can also hyperlink stuff. Like if you have a website or I don't know something that another like page that's important to your project, but you can't fit in that space, you can hyperlink it. Bolding important words that really helps to make like the key points stand out. And references, very important. Don't leave these to the end. Make sure you're referencing stuff or at least having like an idea of where each reference should go to where, like at the start when you're starting to like compile your project board together. Yeah, proper referencing is really important. So yeah, I think utilizing all of these. It's helpful. Also, the images you can have on like each square of the project board. I think that helps to catch the initial like audience their attention. So I think having like unique squares is important too. Yeah.
I think to add to that, you can like take inspiration from previous year's winners and kind of dissect what they did. I think I saw one guy literally upload his whole research paper, and he did it so well. It was like an embedded hyperlink, I believe. He did it really well. He had chapters and a lot of good graphics in his research paper. So that's something you could do too. Again, you don't really want to expose your project also, because in case you want to apply for patents or something like that in the future, but you can do something like that. And again, I believe the judges look at this the day before they judge you, or right before they judge you as well. So think of it again as your first impression.
So the video does matter. And like, how do you make your project board more like appealing?
I just like Caitlin said, the squares is something that I actually did. I had like a checker pattern, so that's what I did. But you can do a lot of work with graphics to make it more appealing. So I don't know. There's a lot of good answers for this. I used Procreate. I used Photoshop to do my graphics like that. Really, have a let's say utilize all the room you have. Make it kind of as aesthetically pleasing as possible. If you want to have a color scheme and go above like and beyond like that, you can do that for sure. Looks are something that does matter for project board. So it kind of also shows that you care, I guess, about your project and the type of person you are. So I would go above and beyond with the aesthetics of the project board for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna share my screen for just so it's easier to visualize what I'm talking about. For my project 2 years ago, my partner and I, we took like original photos for our little square. So all of these photos you see here are like what we made. So yeah, most of these were taken either in my living room or at my high school. So for example, like the why, the how, the what, like these are just blurred images of our prototypes. And also this Y right here, that's a Braille board that we used for experiments. It was like the gold standard of learning Braille that we had at that time. And then the so what, that's actually a picture of one of our classmates who was part of our experiment. And then the video, that's actually our regional science fair poster. I think having these images that are original, it resonates more with your project. And then just kind of play around with it to see like what angles or like what contrast is more visually appealing. And another thing that we included was the Braille underneath each category, just because it resonated with our project because it was a Braille learning device. I think try to see what your own project has that's unique, and then maybe you can incorporate it some way into your own panels. It's really different for each person's project because like aesthetics are sometimes subjective. So what we think looks good might to someone else not look good. So I think you don't have to make everyone happy. Just do your best, see what would capture your interest, and then try to apply that to your own project board. And yeah, yeah, really use as many pictures as you can. Like here, like visuals representing your statistics, explaining concepts, and then refer to them within your description. Like, for example, figures 4 to 5. And then, yeah, I mentioned earlier bolding important terms that stand out, or numbers in this case. Um, yeah, that's all I have.
So, a- and like, how much detail should your project have? Like, how much detail should we include on our project board to balance clarity with thoroughness?
Oh, I think, like I said before, I can't find my project board now. Basically, what I had was for the how. I believe what I did was I had a diagram, and then within the diagram, kind of like Caitlin's, I referenced it within my text below. It was a flowchart that showed the code because code is if you don't know code, it's really hard to read. So the flowchart was like how the code works. So when the device starts up, this is what happens to it. So having something like a flowchart is really nice. A diagram to show how your projects work, because if they don't know code, that's something that you can do. But you can also use a flowchart in various other instances as well. I'll try to find a flowchart for you, and I'll show you what I mean by that. But you can search it up, and it's just a chart that shows you, that kind of walks you through how your code would work. So that's something you can do within your project board and also within your poster as well. But a balanced thoroughness, again, presentation, you want to keep it, in my opinion, kind of as simple as possible, but also showing a bit of complexity as well within like how you explain things, and kind of dumb it down at a fifth grader level so that everyone can understand it. And then your poster and your project board, that's where you can kind of explain in more complex terms on kind of what your project is on.
Yeah, I agree. I think flowcharts are really helpful. This is the one that I had 2 years ago. Looking back, I think this could probably be cut down even more. Like, this is a bit text heavy in my opinion. Yeah, having a flowchart is helpful, and just charts in general. Like, this was how much our prototype costed. Um, yeah, really using pictures. And then having your text broken down to sections, I think, was helpful. Like, for example, this is the what section. So we broke it down. Like, you have a little paragraph for hardware, another little paragraph for software. And for the why, once again, this is also broken down. You have your background information. It's very brief. You just want to give the audience what, like, the only things they need to know to be able to understand your project. The problem is important to emphasize, because it comes across like it gives people a reason for why your project is important, and what kind of impact it's trying to have, and what kind of problem you're trying to solve in the real world. And then the purpose is kind of similar, it ties into that as well. I think, yeah, just overall breaking it into smaller chunks of text, and then having as many pictures as you can and referring to that. Yeah.
And what are some general tips for communicating scientific ideas effectively through the writing on the project board?
Ooh. Here, I'll show you my project board as well. I don't think, if I can do it, I don't think it was as good as Caitlin's necessarily. There's a lot of things that I could have done better. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is a flowchart that I used for the code. My device at the time was a hearing aid that you could use with AI. So this just walked you through that code. And I thought this was a lot better than just showing the code itself. That would really communicate it a lot better to really anyone, if you know code or if you don't know code. Then I had some testing data there within like the like bar graphs and pie charts, I believe. So, use these visuals to your advantage, really. So this was back in the day. My invention has since been improved a lot, so don't judge on the appearance of it. Yeah, this is kind of the aesthetic that I went for, kind of a blue aesthetic here, checkerboard pattern. But yeah, everything that Caitlin said is really applicable. So look at her project for it, and probably don't look at mine. There's a lot of improvements needed to be done.
No, what are you talking about? I like your flowchart better, actually. Your flowchart is like a good example. I think everyone should follow. Just like having it less heavy and more just straight to the point. Yeah, I think for the project board, like the first time you do it, you're gonna look back and think, man, I should have done that differently. But yeah, there's always room for improvement. Just look at other people's project boards and see what you like, maybe what you don't like, and try to just make your own project board a combination of everything that you liked. Question was how to communicate scientific findings effectively. I think having graphs, having data to back you up, like saying something is one thing, proving something is another. So if you're making an innovation, for example, don't stop at just a prototyping. If you can, like, conduct an experiment that actually validates how well it works. Looking back, I think something that helps is if you can find a gold standard. For example, for my project on teaching people Braille, the gold standard at that time would have been like that little Braille board. And then something we were emphasizing on was independence. So we wanted visually impaired people to be able to learn Braille in a way that they can do it by themselves without like a tutor, because tutors are very expensive. We wanted it to be as low cost as possible as well. And so for this like control, the best way to learn by yourself was through that board. So we had like half of the people in our study learn through the board, the other half learn through our innovation. They were both given the same amount of time. The settings, conditions are all the same. And then from there, we just evaluated the data, compiled that into like a little graph, made a section of the results and the experiment process on our poster after our prototyping process. I think that was like adding another chapter to your story, to your project. And it not only does it make it more like coherent, but it also backs up what you're saying with science, with data. So I recommend that in terms of conveying your project, not just saying what you did and how it can impact or make a change, but also showing proof and data that supports what you're trying to convey.
Okay. And does like mentorship work during your research, or
I didn't have a mentor, so it's don't make it seem like science fair is something that you can only do if you have a mentor, if you have a laboratory. It's not. Really, again, my lab was just my room. So you can do science fairs within whatever circumstances you're in. You don't really need a mentor. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. If you're doing like something biology related, you probably need a mentor. But like, for the most part, you really don't necessarily need a mentor. Don't let that become a barrier that is something that you have to get in order to do science fairs. It's not. You can start science fairs with whatever you have, honestly. Again, mentorship, from what I've seen, it is something that can really help. If you have a laboratory, if you have someone that knows what they're doing, that has done it before, it's something that could really benefit you. If you don't have one, I think something like this, like a workshop where you can ask people who've done it in the past, is really beneficial. So yeah, that's my advice. It's not something that you have to need.
100% agree. You don't need a mentor or a professor or like, yeah. I think for my project, I had myself and my partner, and then we like, of course you want to be confident enough that you can do it, but also humble enough that you're willing to ask people for advice, for help, and to just take suggestions from literally anyone. So we shared, my partner and I, we both went to the same high school, and so we discussed our project a lot with our teachers, our high school teachers. um yeah, like not even just teachers that are in science, but literally any teacher, because like anyone can give advice that will benefit your project. So we were very open to receiving advice from our teachers, from our peers, from everyone. And I think incorporating everyone's advice were helpful, or thinking of reasons why you shouldn't incorporate it. That kind of acts as like mentorship of itself, in the sense that it helps to enhance your project in a way that you wouldn't have been able to on your own. So I think just be very receptive to what other people have to say. You don't need a mentor, but it could be helpful. Like if you can have a professor or an upper year student with experience say yes to mentoring you, then definitely take it. But by no means, it's not a requirement. Like just because you don't have a mentor doesn't mean you shouldn't do a project. You should still 100% do it. And I tend to find that if you have an idea already, if you have like a project already, people are like professors or mentors or anyone you want to be your mentor are more willing to say yes if you have something to show them. You don't want to just have like, you don't want to just be thinking, I want to do the science fair. I have no idea. And then go up to someone and ask, can you be my mentor? Or like, can you give me an idea? I don't think that works well. I think once you have an idea, people will be more willing to say yes to your mentor if you choose to have a mentor. Yeah, like Yuri said, don't let mentorship be a barrier. Like literally anyone would be able to help you. Yeah.
okay? And what are some tips for getting the audience's attention during the presentation? Like, how can we make our enthusiasm for our project come across in a presentation?
I don't know. Like Caitlin said, body language is arguably more important than what you say in the context of what you say, right? So practice that. You can't, don't let science fair again be your first presentation. Just like Caitlin said, practice well before that. School presentations, always try your best to present yourself as you would want to, really, to a professional, right? So that'd be like, try to smile, try to be positive, have good posture, things like that. That is something that kind of something that, how do I say this? Like underlying something that you would judge on. You don't notice it, but something that you do judge on. So keep that in mind. And to make it engaging, me and Kinley, we both had the physical prototypes so that the judges could try out. I didn't see a lot of projects have that. So if you have a physical prototype, bring that, because that is really cool and they can sort of judge firsthand on kind of what your prototype is like. So do that. I think having a physical prototype is a big factor of how to make your presentation a lot more engaging.
Yeah, as long as the prototype matches the requirements of the science fair. I think there were some things that we had to fix for our prototype so that we were able to bring it in. But yeah, dress to impress. I think it's important to just not wear a hoodie, even if it's comfy. You want to dress formally so that you're being taken seriously. And it's also part of that whole first impression thing as well. Talk loudly, because if you go to CWSF, everyone is in the same gym, so it can be quite loud. So you want to be able to talk. You want to practice talking loudly, confidently, and at a decent pace. I think sometimes if you can incorporate humor into your presentation, it could be a good thing. But you don't it is kind of difficult when it comes to STEM stuff, so you don't have to. You can engage your audience by encouraging them to ask questions, answering their questions. Um, yeah, try to not say a lot like how I just did. If you prepare your presentation a lot, naturally you'll say less. Yeah, try to have as little filler words as you can. Yeah.
Okay, so got it. No. And what was the most challenging aspect of presenting your project at CWSF, and how did you overcome it?
Oh, I think mine really was that judging failure that I had. It was like my second judge, I believe. So I had to, after that, how I overcame it was I fixed my prototype first. I went quickly and grabbed new batteries. But then after that, I just forgot about it. And it was only like that night at the hotel where I was crying over it. But at that moment, just forget about it. You can sort of reflect on that, in my opinion, a bit later on. You kind of want your mental state to be at peace, be at calm. Don't let small things really get to you, so you don't start that negative domino effect. So yeah, that was probably my biggest failure and how I overcame it. So always be optimistic. That's what I'd say.
That's a very good response. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Like Yuri said, one judge is just one judge. It's just one individual, and not everyone will like your project the same way that you like it. But that doesn't matter because it's your passion. Your project should be your passion. If you have a judge that shares your passion, that's great. If you have a judge that doesn't really whose perspective doesn't align with yours as much, then whatever, just move on. I think don't let one judge or one experience bring you down. Just keep going. Sometimes, it can be a good learning experience. There probably are parts that you can still improve from, but ultimately, it's important to not let it affect you negatively. If anything, it should just affect you positively to allow you to grow. I think one challenge, if you have a partner, having that distribution is important. You want to be able to talk equally the same amount of time. As if you want to get the same amount of time in if you can. Same with questions. You want to be able to answer the equal amount of questions if you can. But sometimes there are judges that focus on one aspect of the project that is more so the strength of one individual person. I think that's fine, but ultimately for the distribution, you want to be as equal as you can.
That's a great answer. And what are some piece of advice which you want to give for people who are preparing or are demotivated to do science fair project?
Oh, you could. What I would say is that I didn't necessarily do this. Something I wish I did is you can kind of for context, basically, my project were with the hearing impaired. I knew a couple hearing impaired people, so I tested it on them. But what you can do, like before your project, that's like a month or two before, like try to get it on as early as possible, is contact organizations that deal with hearing impairments, whatever it is, and see if they would be willing to test out your project and compare it to alternatives that are on your market. So really just cold email organizations and see if they'd be willing to sort of give feedback on your project. That's kind of a way that you could prepare. And if you presented that, like, let's say, I don't know, Hearing Impaired Canada tested my project, it's kind of a cool kind of thing you can say in your presentation as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's the one thing I liked about Yuri's project is that you actually tested on the real intended audience. For my project, like it was tested on the people in my high school, and to mimic the visually impaired aspect, we just blindfolded them. But I think thinking back, if I were to do things differently, I would get the real audience. It just makes the experiment more credible. I think, like what Yuri said, if you get the opinions of, for example, for my project, had to do with Braille. Like, for example, if I had sent an email to larger organizations asking if they would be interested in this project and if they think that it could actually be implemented in the real world, like just even attaching like a screenshot or a quote of their response can really back up the credibility of your project. Like, if they are saying that they think that your innovation has the potential to significantly like enhance Braille education or whatever problem you're trying to solve, I think that is going to help your project a lot. I think another thing is to not be too focused on the outcome or like your final performance at the science fair. I think looking back, like I'm in second year university now, I think the process of the project is very important. Like every single barrier that you overcome, every single step you take out of your comfort zone, that's going to help you a lot in the future. The fact that you guys are already doing science fair projects in high school or in elementary school is a huge plus. Like, it's going to help you a lot in whatever future endeavors you have. I think, like, for example, right now I'm doing my own research here at Queen's University, and it is hard. Like, it is I'm very stressed out about it, and there are a lot of barriers that I have to overcome. But I always think back to my science fair projects and other projects that I've had in high school, and how in that moment when I was in like grade 10 or grade 11, grade 12, I also thought that my project was incredibly stressful and incredibly hard, but I still made it through. So I think the fact that you guys are doing this, you're getting this experience early, it's going to help you a lot in the future. Yeah, don't be afraid to just step up your comfort with new people. Like, you can learn a lot from other people. My project, my science fair partner, like I approached my science fair partner at a bus stop. So it wasn't even like it was a very like spontaneous um comfort zone like breaking type of thing. But after that result, like even in university, I still like do projects and stuff, and I still reach out to people that I don't know that well to see if they'd be interested in doing stuff with me. I think having a lot of brains together working on one common goal, it's you can do a lot of things like that. It really makes a big difference. It really helps. Um, I think if you have multiple people working on a project, it takes you really far. Of course, there are also like downsides, like having a lot of people working together. If you have conflicts and ideas and stuff, that takes time. It takes longer. The process is longer, but in the end, you can go farther. So I think consider having a science fair partner. You don't need to like if you can do it yourself, that's good. But consider having a science fair partner because other people can have ideas that you never thought of, and it can really change the course of your project and help your project a lot.
And I think that's it. Now I'll just pass it to Prabhu.
Yeah, that's it for all the questions we have. Thank you, Caitlin and Yuri. Yuri, I know you have to go. Thank you so much for being here and all your amazing advice. And thank you to Caitlin too and all your amazing advice. Whenever you two are here, it's always like so inspirational. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Now next, Yuri, you can go if you want. I know you're
You can
probably
always do
busy
some
now.
Q&As. I think I'll be good. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So now we have a general Q&A. I think Birth Provide, you can turn the recording off now, just so we can like allow people to like ask any personal questions they might have. Yeah, any